Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creativity-Hive's weekly program. I'm Miriam Haugen. I'm part of the Creativity-Hive team. We help creatives to create impactful storytelling videos through one-on-one teaching and live group coaching. And we're really excited to bring you this week's guest. But first, a word from our sponsors. We have two sponsors for today's show, and here they are. Today's Creativity Hive episode is brought to you by iNet Media. iNet Media brings visual creativity to your video projects to tell your story and get noticed. inet-media.co.za. Santa Experience Oregon creates a magical experience for your children and heirloom art for you that we will treasure for a lifetime. Watch while your children have milk and cookies with Santa, find their names in the nice book, and so much more. Visit santaexperienceoregon.com. Today's guest is Oliver Mann. He's a writer, director, producer, filmmaker, and he offered to share his knowledge with us. So let's bring on Oliver. Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. So you have an interesting story, and I would love to have you tell everyone your story about how you got to where you are today and where you're headed.
Sure. Well, I know it so well. So I'll start off from when I went to the military. I went to the military around 18 years old. Of course, from high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I graduated high school. So lo and behold, I decided to join the military. And I actually studied to be a hospital corpsman, which is pretty much the field of combat medicine, studying to treat Marines during combat time. But during that time, I was always very creative. I always used to write down notes, and I actually started off songwriting. So I was very creative in my spare time. I used to have two very, very close friends that I used to practice songwriting with, just to have that creative flair. So after the military, I decided to study at Full Sail University in Florida, which is for sound design and for recording arts. After that, I studied entertainment business. Simultaneously, while I was studying there, I was also delving more into the film world. I was practicing sound design because that's what occurred in our curriculum. Half of the curriculum was recording arts, as far as recording artists, musical bands, and then also the other half was now going into the studio and doing Foley, studying sound design. And that's when I fell in love with film. And I said, hey, why don't I put all of this together and maybe I should be a director? And when I decided that, I said, okay, what do I have to do? Watch more movies, which I always did, but really, really with more of an analytical aspect as now a director. While I was doing that, I decided to screenwrite. And then I said, okay, the next step now is to go to the Big Apple. So I went to New York, studied film there. Simultaneously, while I was studying, I was working random jobs to fund the short films that I was directing, also working on sets, you name it. I was an extra, I was a PA, I worked on electrical departments, different student films, simultaneously also directing my own short films. And then about a decade or so ago, I decided now it's time to step into the big leagues and do my feature film, which is Such a Funny Life. Developed that, produced it, directed it. It went into the theaters, and now it's on demand. And now I'm working on my next film, Hero Lost Dirt.
Awesome. And thanks, DJ, she's saying hello, Air Force here.
Hey.
I'll bring Mo and Neil on because they always have.
Hey, Oliver.
Hey. All right.
So, okay, it's been. What are some advice? What's some advice? Now, you went to a film school.
Yes.
Really? A couple of different ones then?
I went to New York. I went to New York Film Academy to
Okay.
study. What I did is I did a workshop there. It was like a summer workshop, I believe, a couple of months to just fine tune and hone the directorial skills that I already had that I studied, that I learned from Full Sail, and I also studied on my own. And then from there, I actually went to School of Visual Arts to study producing commercials and TV. I also did a workshop there. So these were intensive workshops that I studied just to sharpen the knife a little bit, because my obsession was studying film, and then at that time I was on set anyway, so that was my way of studying as well, a real life education, if you will.
Well, and I'm imagining time too. You were meeting other people in the industry.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was meeting crew members. I was meeting cast. Some of the cast that are in my films now in these days. Actually, I met one of my favorite actors, Tom Ashton, who's in Such a Funny Life, who's going to be in Hero Lost Dirt. He was in one of the short films that I was helping out. Actually, one of my mentors, Peter Buntain. He's a cinematographer. He's most known for documentaries, but I actually was helping him out as a PA maybe 15, 16 years ago when I met Tom Ashton on set, and I kind of whispered in his ear, hey, I want to be a director one day. Could I use you for my short film? And ever since then, him and I have been a peas in a pod.
Awesome. That is great.
Yeah.
That is great. So what about, okay, funding? You were going, how do you budget for something like this?
Yeah, well, that's where the producing aspect comes into place. That's where I have to say it. That's where experience comes into place. By default, you have to be a producer, especially if you're making your own films. You have to know what you're spending of your own money. And now in these days, as you get a bigger film, now not only do you need to know what you're spending of your own money, you need to know what you're spending of other people's monies, of equity, investors, production loans. So all that comes into place. So it's really, I'm the producer, and then I have another producer who's on board as well, who has more experience than I do. And we're kind of mixing it up to make sure that this comes to fruition, because this is a multi-million-dollar film. So we want to make sure that we please the audience and also please the people that are involved. So yeah, it takes a lot of budgeting. It's a perennial duty. It takes years, and it depends on the person and the project, but we do it from the moment of inception of the screenplay until the moment we're on set. It's all about numbers.
That's one thing that a lot of people really struggle getting a handle on starting out, is the sheer amount of money that gets involved if you really start planning anything that gets past, well, let's have a show, and you get a few people together and you shoot for an hour, because if you're actually talking about getting something where you're going to need to, you're going to have to rent some lights.
Yes.
We have to get better sound gear than what we've got. And then we've got to have a good audio person working on this. And all of a sudden your costs are just going up dramatically. And that is something that people are so stunned at all the time.
It gets expensive. Absolutely. We're talking about, you name it, locations, catering. Locations is a big one, especially if you want, it depends on how creative the film is. Locations, catering, paying the crew members, cast, of course, the equipment, lighting. If you're shooting in film, which we are, which I do, I shoot in film, so that's a extra expense. So very, it really.
Oh, film.
Yeah, I said it.
That's expensive.
This is like the real thing.
I suppose so. Sure.
So Oliver, is there any particular reason beside the beauty of film still that you're shooting on it? I mean, there's so much processing, and the load is. I don't want to be a load on set. I've seen horrible things happen when people load and mistakes happen. So the question I have is, beside the aesthetic kind of advantage, which is now not really that big of a gap compared to where it was 10 years ago, side by side, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yes.
To bridge that whole gap. Is there any particular reason that you're using film? It is quite considerably more expensive to process and to work with. Dailies are a little bit different when it comes to film, immediate playback on set, etc. The whole thing changes. Is there a reason that is there a specific reason you're choosing film?
Yeah, I think I'm a martyr. I like to be hard on myself. maybe it's the military in me that I want and I'm not saying, hey, I'm not saying that if you shoot in digital, it's not a serious set. One is, like you said, Mo, the aesthetic aspect of it. No matter what, I see the difference. I'm 43 years old, and I grew up on film, watching film since I can remember, 5, 6 years old. I remember my father and we rented Rumblefish with Mickey Rourke on Betamax. Yeah. And I watched that over and over and over, and I couldn't figure out why. I guess it was the beauty of the film and how it looked. So I've been watching film, meaning the medium film, for decades. So it's hard to switch my mind to digital, because when I watch a digital film, I don't feel anything. The story has to be extremely strong for me to absolutely ignore the format. So for me, it's just something that I'm so accustomed to watching it. If that means it's going to be more work on set and even a bigger budget, so be it. I have to work hard to make that happen so I can please the audience, because I know there's other audience members that think just like me. Some people complain about digital, but they do not complain about film.
Okay. Well, the thing is, sorry, Neil, go ahead.
Walter Volpato is one of the top colorists working in the world right now, and he has had, of course, quite a few comments because a lot of the stuff he does has been shot on film, or it's been the stuff where it was shot digitally and then sent off, put on film, and then redigitized from film and everything. So he's been through the whole thing, but he's also pointed out that he's an incredibly practical man, and so he tests deliverables to see what differences you can see. And so he's put some incredible efforts into trying out various, say, film grain emulation things and everything, because by the time you get it, even if you do film, you come back and get it scanned, you lose a lot of it. And but what he found was that by the time you go out into a deliverable, he could do a basic film grain effect in Resolve. And when he would use either a movie theater to present it to other people in Hollywood, or large screen TVs or whatnot, so that, to try to, let's see what it looks like we have an actual movie projection onto a theater screen, or, streaming situation on the TVs.
Sure.
Where even Hollywood people could not tell when he switched from a real heavy, hard-working grain effect to just a basic Resolve effect, because by the time you got the deliverables, the compression and the recreation of the image for screening it, whatever he did, it basically wiped out all the small differences. And so he was noting that he has dropped a lot of the huge things he used to try to do to get film-like work, because it doesn't survive. So it's a fascinating discussion, though. I've seen some music videos recently that were very filmic, and yet they were doing things with colors that are shot digitally, and people were talking about, wow, how filmic this looks. But they were doing things could never, ever have been done with film, as someone who's spent 40 years dealing with film. And so it's this fascinating thing we're in with, what really is filmic,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, there's so many things you can do with digital cameras, right? The range is there to emulate the film, to make it look like film. But, I'm just one of those guys that I'm stubborn. I just I'm just so used to, all of my short films were shot on film, except maybe I think my student film, I did a documentary, and I did it with a Panasonic digital camera. So that doesn't count. But yeah, I'm just, and who knows, I'm not saying for when I do commercial work, I will gladly shoot it on digital if it's for a commercial or for an ad agency. Absolutely. But for a narrative film, I just don't see it at this moment of me not shooting in that format.
Now,
so you're pretty much like Christopher Nolan. You just don't want to go the digital.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, Apocalypto, like you probably know, Slumdog Millionaire, all shot digitally, right? And looked totally. I mean, I had no idea Apocalypto was shot on the Genesis, but I mean, it was it was Panavision, but it looked so filmic, and I guess the way they bridged digital and traditional film is actually in the lighting. It's the cameras, yes, for sure. So, which brings me to the next question, which is increasing your budget a little bit more, or considerably more, because of the aspect of making sure your DP lights correctly is for film. So you're lighting for film. You're not lighting for digital. There's two different worlds completely.
Yes.
So what is your film about? I mean, I'm not sure if you can allowed to speak about it yet, or it's not public domain.
Yeah,
is there
I want to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So this upcoming film it's titled Hero Lost Dirt. It's a narrative thriller, and it's a mix between The Fugitive and Out of the Furnace. I know many of us have seen The Fugitive, but Out of the Furnace is a film with Christian Bale, and I'm only using that example after the film came out because I saw it and I said, wow, this has an interesting feel. It's a film about a psychologist who's an up-and-coming psychologist who's hailed as a hero for something that he did, and a certain act that he did in New York City that makes him a hero. And not only that, an upcoming psychologist. That person that he actually saves ends up to be his wife. As we see their relationship evolve, he actually now becomes a suspect in her death. While that happens, she was born and raised in West Virginia, or she has a relative from West Virginia, which is her brother, where the lead character, the psychologist, finds that out and wants to discover more about who she is, her background. And so he goes to West Virginia to set up her funeral, and then he kind of like it goes from a very, very New Yorkish film to a West Virginia film. So the city film to this very southern, dangerous film. So it's a contrast twist between the two, but also showing a character that is hailed, and then having everything taken from him, and then trying to get that back with other people, really, really fighting to see what goes on, and also putting him to the limit. So it's going to be just an amazing film that I'm so excited about, and it's no doubt it's a challenging film to. Like every feature film, it's challenging to fund, but I know once we get on set and once we have the final cut, it's gonna garnish awards. It's gonna be a masterpiece, if you will.
And what is your timeline for shooting? What's your duration from principal?
Yeah, we are doing principal in March of next year, so I'd say about 6 months from now.
And multiple locations? Anything pretty cool and exotic?
No. Well, it can be. So it's going to be in New York, and it's going to be in upstate New York to act as West Virginia. And the reason why we're not traveling from New York to West Virginia is because we don't want to lose the tax credit. We want to make sure we stick in one city so we can take advantage of the tax credit. And just logistically speaking, it wouldn't make sense to take a cast and crew from New York to West Virginia, where we could fake it, if you will, in West Virginia. So we're going to do careful location scouting to make sure a place in upstate can emulate West Virginia.
We spoke a little bit off camera about visual effects. Are you going to be doing any sort of set replacements to set the period, or any sort of stuff like that?
No, we are gonna do VFX, but like I said, it's gonna be for specific things that happen, for specific objects that happen in the woods, such as animals, things like that. But no, as of right now, I don't see anything that deals with locations.
Okay, cool.
But we still will need VFX. We still have a budget for it. For some things that we just can't control. For instance, it's taking place in West Virginia, so we want to make sure it has that feel. So certain elements we have to plug in via VFX.
When you go into post-production, and this is an interesting question, and I probably know what you're going to say already, but for people that don't, what is your piece of editing software or your NLE of choice? Where are you going to go? I mean, what are you
So to believe it or not, I'd say Avid was the thing that we've been sticking with. I mean, we stick with Avid. When I first learned my editing chops, it was Final Cut, right? It was Final Cut was really, really easy to learn, and I could do so much. But then you just take the same education on over to Avid, and it's similarly, it's the same thing editing. It's just a different software. It's a different program. But I'd say Avid is usually what we use when we're in the editing room. But me, I love Final Cut. We could edit on whatever we have our hands on is fine with me.
Right. And you shooting 4K? I'm assuming.
Well, we're shooting on Super 16.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So we're shooting, or perhaps we'll see what the budget lies. There is a small of course, there's a small difference between. I don't want to say small either. There's a difference between 16 millimeter and 35. My goal is to do 35. If I feel like we need to save a couple of bucks here, then I'm going to settle for 16.
Right.
Now you have to digitize this, I assume, though. Right?
Yeah, we have to take it. We have to digitize it. Correct. So we take it to a post house and we have to process it and then digitize it. Correct. And we usually do that in New York as well. I believe Postworks is our go-to.
All right.
So which again adds to the budget of working with film. It just quadruples each time. There's processing, there's digitizing, there's ingesting, there's bringing it. It's quite a tremendous workflow when you're working with film.
Yeah, but when you're an artist, then you must have film. You must have film.
The most important person on set when you're shooting film, beside the director and the DP, is the loader. Because this guy gets it wrong and exposes that can. It's the end. I mean, there's no going back. And that's why for me, digital, as much as film looks great, I mean, my weapon of choice is an Arri Alexa, because nothing comes close to that sensor for me. I don't particularly like red. So having worked on commercials as a director and stuff, it's easy to be, that workflow for me is really, it's as close to film as possible in terms of the way it looks.
Yes.
How you light it is important, without the hassles of having to use a roll of film or you expose it accidentally.
Yes.
But I think if you're going to be working on film, your choice of your loaders and stuff needs to be.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Miriam and I, of course, spent quite a few years loading 120 and 220 roll film into Mamiya RB67 Pro S cameras to do portrait work.
Oh, yeah.
And we also, for much of that time, had our own wet lab up through including film processing. So I've been through all the morass that was working in film long enough that well, there are some things we did notice that, of course, as soon as we went over to digital and you had people with their little cell cameras, that all of a sudden they weren't that interested in hiring professional portrait photographers anymore.
Right.
Because it was suddenly cheap. So that was a problem. But on the other hand, not having those big processors back there, not dealing with film. I mean, you'd get a big batch of film, and of course, with you're shooting a movie, you have to buy, figure out how much is the massive, most overshot we can do this film, and buy all of that film at one go.
Yes.
And because if you realize, oh, we need another reel, and you get it, it's going to be a different batch and the same film. I mean, the quote unquote same film stock in a different batch, it's not going to process the same. It's not going to look exactly the same. And you can try and make up for it in your print, in other words, later on, but it's a lot of work and it's a mess. And besides that, you process it on Monday and it does one thing. You take a second roll that you forgot to process on Monday and you process it on Tuesday in the same equipment, and it's not going to be exactly the same as the way it would have been if you processed it on Monday. And so having fought that for all those years, I'm not hugely romantic about film. Film was a mess. I mean,
Yeah. Sorry.
you could make it look good, but working with it was a mess.
It can, yeah, it really depends, right? It can be, it sure, it can be, but it's as big as we make it, right? It's big as a thing as we make it. I remember when we were on Such a Funny Life, the first day on set, shooting on film, a lot of people were a little bit discombobulated, and they were like, wow, we haven't been on this format in a while. But we had to use it. So the first day was it's like any project, right? The first day is it's a little tricky. Everyone's getting to know each other. Everyone is because not only beside the film is the last thing of our wars. It's okay. Are we rehearsed enough? Is the blocking at where we need to be from our planning, from rehearsing? So there's so many things going on a film set. From my remembrance, I mean, film was probably the last thing on my mind after day one. There was so many other things going on. Are we running out of funds to shoot the film? So yeah, I mean, just shooting a film is just an arduous process in total. So film is maybe number 35 on the pin in the butt list.
Right.
Well, one of the things that is really good about learning, at least to shoot with film, is learning to actually control your lighting.
Yes.
That's one of the biggest things when people say, well, it looks like it was filmic. Well, my God, when you shot on film, you had people that were carefully designing the sets, the costumes, the paint of every wall and every surface was thought out beforehand, because for crying out loud, if you didn't, that was going to be a problem later on. And so it's this whole attention to detail and setting up the image in front of the camera that's really a large part of what makes something filmic, is having that kind of sense. And so when you're doing something like what you're doing there, that forces you to know exactly what contrast ratio you're getting out of your lighting and
Absolutely.
your scene and your background lighting and the practicals or the other things you can't control. You have to be able to figure out how to meter that, how to figure out where that's going and keep that all under control, or you got something you can't use. That is incredibly good practical knowledge.
It does. It forces you to be a better photographer or cinematographer. Yeah, you have to when you're shooting film.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the title, right? Filmmaking.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're doing.
So Oliver, the biggest question I have for your film is, where is it going to go to? Are you going the kind of route where you're going to cinema, or are you going VOD? It's such an important choice, and it's
it's
choice to make, yeah.
And it's a choice that we think about daily until we get there, because it's a business move. It's a business decision, and we want to make sure that we make the right business decision. Because reason being is, I love the art. We're talking about the art. We're talking about filmmaking, but I also like success, and I like to see the fruits of my labor, and that means a successful film. So that's where we have this team to speak to distributors before, to figure out, do we want to have a distributor locked before? Do we want to wait to have a final cut, take it to festivals, shop to distributors there? Do we want to go the theater route, have a theatrical run, and then perhaps have it on VOD? I mean, essentially, it has to go on VOD, right? We want to have it live there forever. But yeah, sure, I would love a theatrical run. I would love a nice theatrical run to have it in theaters through a great distributor. I mean, for instance, I love the distributor A24, and they're doing it. They're hitting a great sweet spot where they pick up films, they have theatrical runs for not too long, not too short, and then it goes on VOD, and then the films do absolutely well. A majority of them do greatly in the industry, and they're under $10 million, and that's really I think that's what we're trying to approach, because our film is under $10 million. So we want to make sure this is a very, very interesting right post, a very, very interesting business decision that we have to consistently think about it. And that's where the producing comes into place, and executive producers, and then the talent that's attached. We want to make sure that the talent also pushes the film forward with the names that we have, that we're attaching, and we're currently casting right now, especially the lead, which we're approaching various names that we have, actors with names that could really, really push the poster. So the goal is that the short answer to your question is the goal is for sure theatrical run, VOD. If it goes to Netflix, great. I'm on the Netflix bandwagon for sure, because they have a pretty sweet buyout. Hopefully they have a pretty sweet buyout. So for sure, we definitely want to go that route. Going straight to VOD, I'll take it. It has to be a good deal, but I love, again, I'm a romantic of film, so I love the idea of, oddly enough, festivals. I like festivals, and sometimes I know it's necessary because you have to find distributors, and festivals are shopping your film, so we have to shop our film because the film, we plan it to just be an absolute masterpiece, but it doesn't. We want to make sure that the right distributor picks it up. And does that mean we need to shop it around, which is synonymous with going to different festivals? We're open to that, but we know it's going to get picked up. So theaters, and then on demand. I definitely would like it on a theatrical run.
There's so many things that affect the business model you're looking at. I was reading an article just recently where Warner Brothers has decided to take a write-off on a lot of their materials that they have rights for, and so and of course much of this is the only way you can see it now is it's streamed on various other services, and there are a lot of films that they have that they aren't released on DVD and at this time, so they're the only way you can get them is streaming. Well, they've decided to take a tax write-off and change the direction on a few things, and you've got some directors going, all of a sudden their film has disappeared, and something that they had worked very hard and they created, they have no right to make sure that anybody ever sees that film again, because Warner Brothers just took a tax write-off and says it's no longer profitable to keep this up, and so they've removed it from anybody being able to stream it. And wow. And the directors are just going, holy, what, you made my film disappear forever. And when they've had their lawyers talk with the great WB, the response is, hey, tough luck, kid, you got your money, right?
That's just painful.
Yeah, that's shelving the film, right? That's when you go with the studio, and that can actually happen where the film just doesn't get played. I'm not at that point since I'm doing an independent film. I mean, essentially, I'm the one who has the final call on everything. Eventually, I will be working for a studio. So will I have the pleasure to go through that of having my film shelved? Who knows?
Who knows? Okay, I want to know if we want to follow your journey with this film, is there a place that we can go to do that?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm on social media, of course. The film is, and I'm coupled, right? I'm a pair with the film. So Instagram, Facebook, I believe. I don't have my social media manager with me, so I'm going to try to remember this, but Facebook should be facebook.com/Such a Funny Life. And then it promotes Such a Funny Life and Hero Lost Dirt. Instagram should be maybe Hero Lost Dirt. And then Twitter, I believe it's the same thing, maybe at HLD Film. Or better yet, Google, type in Oliver Mann, Hero Lost Dirt.
Hero Lost, LOST.
2 S's, Hero, HERO, LOSS, and then Dirt, DIRT.
Let's see if I got it.
Sure. And then I'm going to plug in this.
Putting it up. I don't know. See if I mess it up.
Oh, my ring light is back on. Awesome. I went from good guy to the bad guy with the light.
Bad lighting guy. Okay. Is this? Let's see. Okay. Is that right?
Yes. Hero Lost Dirt. You got it.
Although without spaces, but
yes, ma'am. Sure.
Awesome. Or Such a Funny Life.
So Oliver, I've just quickly Googled tons of interviews that have come up, some on SoundCloud and stuff. So I see it's getting quite a bit of traction, which in the pre-production phase is actually pretty important.
Yes.
To get on. Are you doing an EPK throughout the movie? You doing any kind of press kit for it?
Yeah, we are. We do. Obviously, we're starting the process now, but we are. We're going to do heavy marketing. I do have executive producers that are on board right now, so we're going through the whole process of definitely marketing it. P&A before, obviously, after is extremely important, but. We have to do, since this is my bigger film, much bigger than Such a Funny Life, which was completely independent. Marketing came the moment we picked up distribution, not before. We're doing everything, I don't want to say the right way, a different way, because this is a bigger budget film, which means if it's a bigger budget film, we want to make sure that there's more of a possibility of getting recoupment back. So we're starting before and after. That is the smartest move. Like any business, right? You want to market your business before, during, and after. So the greatest thing now in these days is social media is almost like social media is so important. Hence the reason why I hired a social media team, and it's going to kick up even more once we start doing auditioning, rehearsing, casting. The whole gamut. Once we start location scouting, that's going to be a part of our social media movement, because I'm sure a lot of our fans are going to come from that world.
My final question to you would be, where does Oliver Mann want to be after this film? Are you shooting straight for Hollywood? Is that where you predominantly want to live, or is it more the independent indie style kind of thing that you want to do? Just the kind of your personal aspirations, I guess.
Yeah, great question. Well, I'm independent by default. I'm doing independent films by default, because being independent independent means just that. I start off independently. I have to work my way to get support. For instance, Such a Funny Life, it didn't have investments. It wasn't built off of venture capital. It was built off me funding it myself. And then I had some support coming afterwards. This film, it's going the route of where we have the whole model together. We have the venture capital, we have the equity, we have pre-sales, we have the loans, we have whatever we can to make this film happen. And it's painful. It's an arduous process. And I'm not saying that, okay, great, I do this one independent film, and then a studio says, hey, we really like your $3 million, $5 million film. We'd like you to now move into the studio world and do a film plus $20 million. I would do it, absolutely. And I think a good, and we spoke about Christopher Nolan. I think he's a good example of, he makes films that are still, they're still cerebral. They still have thought to them. And if you watch The Dark Knight, that was a huge budget, but he would not back down of the film format, which he's very steadfast on that, but also the story, a psychological story. I mean, you can really say The Dark Knight was dark, right? It had a very psychological tone. So a studio can say, this could be a little bit too dark for us. But then Christopher Nolan could say, well, I think it's just dark enough, and I think it's just interesting enough for a mass audience to like, a mass audience in the sense of billions of people, which also means we will get our money back. So I think there's I know there's a lot of rebels out there that are independent filmmakers, and they say, I don't want to shoot for a studio, and I don't want to say they're rebels without a cause. That's just not me. If I feel like a studio wants me to direct a film, and I completely agree that we can do it for a big budget, and an audience would be just absolutely galvanized, and the goal is for the audience to walk out of the theater and feel something. If I can make that happen, and it's in the 20 to 50 million dollar range, I'll do it for sure. I will not say no.
It's very interesting that you said the audience must walk out and feel something. So to me, that says your quality, the experience, the script is paramount for you, not the money. So if they offered you a 50 million movie with a really lackluster script, it seems to me you'd probably walk away, compared to a 20 million that has a solid script that would make an emotional impact on the audience, which is a great answer.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely, because as we know, being on the task of making a film is it's just so arduous. It's such a process. I mean, if you don't know how the process is, it's a very, very tough process. It's creating a startup company every time you want to make a film. So and then once the film is out, your startup company is gone per se, and then you're off to do another startup company. So absolutely, so the reason why I say that is because if I'm going to do this startup company, I want to make sure it's impactful, such as Uber, such as Airbnb. It's the same philosophy. You want to have a movement. You want to make a dent in this world. So and with filmmaking, it is just that. I only know how to make stories that are impactful for an audience to walk out of it, because I myself have had an impactful life. I only know how to write and direct that. And I think, and if you watch Such a Funny Life, you can kind of get the idea that I do what I can with a budget, but acting and characters and story is number one for me.
Fantastic. Great stuff.
I like that. I like that quote. All right. So I want to know what advice do you have people, maybe to somebody who's just starting out? What would you have done differently? Is there anything you would have done differently?
Oh boy, probably work a 9 to 5. No, I'd probably say, if they want to get into the industry, I would say do as much. Now in these days, there's so much you can do to be on a film set, with social media, with different ways to. I mean, we're talking about Mandy.com as far as you going online to find out if you want to be a PA, working on sets, finding jobs to get to a film set, and then actually going on film set and looking around, dissecting everything. It doesn't have to happen right then and there. I started off as an extra on a film called Pride and Glory with Edward Norton and Colin Farrell, I believe. This was about maybe 18 or 19 years ago, 2000, and so maybe 18, 17 years ago. But I remember I found that through Craigslist, maybe, or some online fashion where I found that, and then I decided to go there. And then while I was an extra, I actually spoke to one of the second AD and asked him if I could help out being a PA, and he said, "Sure, why not? I'm not going to pay you." I said, "I don't care. I'll do it." I'll do it. And then from that moment, I knew to myself, okay, this is what I have to do. I have to shop myself around as a business in the sense of learning. Not saying that, hey, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a director. I knew that, but you have to find ways of really, really getting stripes, getting your military stripes and getting your experience. So if you're a videographer, if you're a gaffer, but your goal is to be a film director or a department head, there's ways to do it, but it takes work. You have to find ways to be active. And now in these days, there really is no excuse. There really is no excuse of finding ways to get on set. If someone says no, then you keep going until you find the yes. That's my answer. There's not a no. There's only a yes eventually.
Yeah. Keep going till you find a yes.
That's
great. That is a good advice for life in general, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I think filmmaking is quite a bit like one of my other passions as a person has been listening to opera. That these massive human voices that are not amplified in any way and project outsized emotion and experience. And I've become good friends with several major operatic performers, and that's a very, very difficult and a very hard life. You spend between 6 and 10 months a year away from home and family, living out of hotels or whatnot. And every 4 to 6 weeks, you shift locations and you're with a different group of people. So your support network is very small. Your kids, if you have them, and your wife are far away. And as one put it, he was doing a show in Oslo, and he was the lead tenor in a very dramatic show. And he said, the end of the performance with the audience going nuts on a night when he knew he'd really crushed it. It was really an incredible experience. And you go out to have dinner with some people, and then it's 2 a.m. and you're walking back to your hotel alone.
Yes.
Because you are alone.
Yeah.
And said that, and with all the ones I've known, they say that it's like ballet or opera or anything like that. You only really do this if you can't not do anything else.
Absolutely. Yes.
If you can do anything else, that's probably a wiser thing. But if you have to do it smart.
Yes.
You have to pay attention and learn.
You're absolutely right, Neil. And then just to add on to that, if there's, I hate to be dramatic, but I love to be dramatic. If you're an artist and there's something that tells you absolutely need to do this thing, such as whether it's, and I'm talking about arts in a whole, but whether it's opera, whether it's being a ballet dancer, whether it's being a graphic designer, whether it's being an editor, whether it's being a director, whether it's being a director of photography. If it's something that you envision and you dream about it, I hate to sound dramatic, but I love to sound dramatic. You need to do it. You need to absolutely do it. If it's something that you just feel like you cannot live without it, and that's very subjective. For me, it's something that I felt like I needed to do, as absurd as that sounds to be a film director. It's still kind of absurd for me to call myself that, but I am that. I can't help it. It's actually what I do, but it's absurd that I am that. But I pushed myself because I said to myself, you know what? I need to direct film. I need to create stories. So I always say this a lot. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Anyone can do it that is passionate enough.
If you push yourself,
if you're not passionate, then you might as well just, work the 9 to 5.
Yeah. And there's, that happens. And that's completely understandable. That happens. And I don't blame them. This is, it's a very, very tough job. There's going to be times that, and as you know, and I'm sure a lot of listeners know, most of the time people don't believe in you. They're going to think what your idea, because it's an idea. It doesn't manifest until this physical thing has its run, whether it's a show, whether it's a play, whether it's a film. No one is going to believe it until they see it. The only person that sees it is that person, the creator. So imagine that. Imagine going through life and years and years and years. Exactly. Imagine going through life years and years and years of this thing in your mind that you have in your head. No one else does, but you know that it's going to get done one day. So it's a tough career, but it exists for a reason. Only the strong survive.
Peter Jackson.
Hero lost dirt. Is there any particular reason for? It sounds pretty Tarantino-ish. If I didn't know, if I just happened to see that, I would have thought it's a Tarantino title. Is there any reason for that hero loss and then there's dirt at the end, which is just, I'm trying to figure out the dirt.
Yeah, it's tonal. It goes in tonal chapters, and tonal meaning in the sense of hero is when you see the first act, you see the making of this hero, the psychologist. That's a hero. Loss is because now we see the second chapter. We see what the psychologist goes through when he loses everything. And then dirt is when he goes to West Virginia, and it just has that dirty, very this tough tone. So it goes from hero, loss, dirt. It goes from clean, it goes from loss, and it goes from this very dangerous tone, which is synonymous with dirt to me. And not only that, the character, one of the supporting co-star, the characters in the film is named Dirt. So it goes hand in hand. The atmosphere is very dirtish, and then the character is named Dirt.
Cannot wait to see it.
Okay, yeah, we're looking forward to this. I'm definitely going to have to follow the journey here. And it's time to sign off, guys. Thank you so much, Oliver, for joining us. And this has been a fascinating conversation.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Absolutely.
It's been a joy.
All right. I'll sign off now. Thanks, guys.